Well, good morning, if I may, with your permission.
Yes, sir. Please start.
Ambi, start. My name is Gopalakrishnan. This is Ambi Parameswaran. We are also old friends. And we are both authors of our respective books. This is the book written by Ambi. It's called All the World's a Stage. Not the kind of stage where Aarti performs, but a different kind of a stage, and he will talk about it.
And this is the book by R. Gopalakrishnan and his brother R. Srinivasan, Pivots for Career Success, Unleashing People Power. Okay, that's his latest book.
So what I thought we might do, Ambi, if that's all right with you,
Yes, sir.
is I can spend 10 minutes, since it's a bit unreasonable for me to assume that everybody has been reading my book. It's not won the Pulitzer or the Booker or anything like that. Just explaining what the book is about, and you can do the same. And then we can have a little conversation and perhaps invite any participation from the audience. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so let me start. Now the light is in the opposite direction here. Firstly, this book, Pivots for Career Success, what is it about and how did it come about? It's authored by me and my brother, and between us we've had about 85 years of experience in enterprise and corporate management in pretty decent companies. And one day while we were sitting and chatting, we both stumbled on to a Brahma Mantra. As you know, Brahma Mantra is self-evident once it has been pronounced. And the Brahma Mantra we came to is that business is not, an enterprise is not just, by the way, you can use business and enterprise to be going into every field, politics, drama, theatre, literary arts, etc. But I will use business and enterprise because that's my calling, is all about human relations. That is the differentiating factor. Everybody can go to IIM and get a degree. Everybody can get a PGDM or whatever it's called, all that stuff. They can come to St. Paul's and get a diploma. But the differentiating factor is how you deal with yourself, with other people, and build a network and an ecosystem. And we called it Unleashing People Power, and that's why the subtitle of this book is Unleashing People Power. We believe this is the most underexploited resource in the world of enterprise. It's taken for granted. And you see evidence of this every morning when you see what Elon Musk has done or what Facebook has done with their employees. Now, I'm just taking two names that come to my mind. There are many Indian examples as well. Then we sat down and started exchanging notes and said, how can we bring this Brahma Mantra to the attention, particularly of young people? And we have separated the book into 3 sections to make it easy and readable. First is understanding yourself, who you are. The second section is understanding other people, who they are. And the third section is understanding the context. What is the context in which you and others are interacting? Now, lest this sound abstruse, it is a fact that in the Vedanta, they said, and Swami Vivekananda had said this in Chicago, that understanding yourself or self-awareness is the most important feature. But now you see me wearing a particular shirt. None of you knows me. And if you see me, you'll say, well, what's a guy of that age wearing such a bright shirt for? Some others may think, how nice that people of that age are wearing a bright shirt. It will not have any particular effect on you. But if you saw me outside a theatre which is screening Har Har Mahadev, you will see the same person and saying, am I the agitator or the defender? Have I got a political leaning? If you see me in Haridwar or Rishikesh, you'll say, wow, he's come on a pilgrimage. So the same object seen under a different light has a different implication. And that's the point I'm making about why these 3, understanding the self, understanding others, and understanding the context. We've put each of those sections into a chapter, into a lesson. So there are 30 lessons in all of the book. Easy to digest, we think, as authors. And I want to give you just an example of 3 or 4 in the few minutes that I have. Yeah. And then Ambi will do the same with his book. And as you can see, in a very democratic fashion, he's taken my book, I have taken his book. We're not holding our own books. which is a very important thing in all forms of relationships, because if you can't try to see the other person's point of view, you don't even get off the ground. Let me tell you one example. One of the stories here relates to looking after your health and your physique. And I want to narrate a little story which also appears in the book. When I was 9 years old, my father took me, we were growing up in Calcutta, and introduced us into the tennis club for coaching lessons. And we had a former Davis Cup player called Dilip Bose, who was the coach or the major domo. And we were 8, 9 years old with that racket in our hand. He would make us run around till we were dead beat, and when we were dying to get hitting the ball. So we said, sir, we get tired. Why can't we run after we finish playing? Is it that important? And he asked us a question which has stayed with me now for 70 years. He said, if I gave you only one car which you must have for the whole of your life, how would you treat the car? We said, with great care. He said, your body is the only car you're going to have for the rest of your life. If you don't learn to take care of your body, it doesn't matter whether you become a tennis player or something else, but your body is the only car you're going to have for the rest of your life. And that led to a certain set of implications for me, which I've written about and I won't go into now. But the lessons are as simple and self-evident as that story suggests. The second one I would like to narrate to you, I'm associated with a lot of young people. Both of us are associated with a management college here. Young people say, sir, we are very stressed. Traveling is tough, life is tough, living in Bombay is tough, career is tough, bosses are, and colleagues make it tough. So stress is a big factor. And there is little doubt in my mind that that is so. I think I had a more stressful childhood than my father had in the village where he came from. And my son has had daughters have had a more stressful life, and their children are having an even more stressful life. So how do you deal with stress? There are lots of stories. You can do yoga, you can do deep breathing, pranayam, you can go, all those lessons are available and I don't need to tell you. But the story that appears in the book is about a film which you might have seen. We take ourselves so seriously that we feel stressed. The problem is us. There's a film, I don't know how many of you have seen it, called Zorba the Greek. It has Anthony Quinn acting in the main role. He's called the boss because he's a powerful business magnate who goes looking for mines from which he can do mining and then sell and make lots of money. So he arrives at this particular place and he's got an assistant called Zorba to take him around. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, I'm encapsulating it. And every evening, tired after a long day, exhausted by the stress, Zorba would sort of have his dinner and go to sleep. The boss would have his dinner and go to sleep. And Zorba would be fooling around with the girl, sitting by the campfire, having a drink, enjoying himself. And after several days, the boss said, Zorba, I think you should sleep. And he said, boss, I think you should dance. It's a very lovely dialogue, which you might wish to see if you see in the movie. And Zorba says, you take life too seriously. The world won't stop if you're not around. Come and dance. Have you ever danced? And Anthony Quinn gets up and shuffles, and he does a bad job of it. And Zorba, to a very magical music that plays in that movie, teaches the boss how to dance. And that's what bosses, people like him and me, I'm not pointing fingers at other people, we tend to take ourselves too seriously. So that's about dealing with stress. Another of these 30 lessons that are there is about humility. It's titled Humility Has Power. In our Hindu trinity, we think of Shiva as the symbol of power. And you all know what are the symbols that go with Shiva. But humility has a power. In his book, he has referred to Gandhiji as the example of humility displaying power. And we have narrated a little story which brought me down to terra firma. Because in the course of our careers, we tend to take ourselves so seriously, we think we have arrived. I had become a director of the company, Hindustan Lever, at a fairly young age, 41, and maybe you should be indulgent and allow me the feeling that I had really arrived and I belonged. When I found the fraud in my department, for about, I don't know, $200,000, $300,000. But this was, for those who are young here, I must tell you, those days, if you had even $5 out of place, you were put into jail under a law called FERA. And it brought me down to earth. And my dilemma was, do I go and admit that I don't know what happened? Or do I delay it? Or do I just put it under the carpet? In the public domain, you see this happening all the time. Some bank, some NPA, something. And you're seeing all the three actions. But in my case, by the grace of the Lord, I went to my chairman and I said, you know, I'm supposed to know what's happening, but I don't know what's happened in this particular one case. And I had the whole company helping me to sort out the mess. And that left me a lesson in humility, that when you're just about the time you're thinking that this whole world pivots around you, somebody sends you a lesson which suggests the opposite. And the last story, and then I'll stop and pass on to Ambi, is what is the purpose of a career? These are questions, by the way, that we have learnt ourselves and which I find young people often ask. The purpose of the career is to make money, to get a house, to get a pretty wife, to, go on holidays to Maldives. That's all fine, but that's not the purpose of a career. And very often we drift into our 50s. And I feel really bad when somebody who's 62 comes and says, I'm going to retire and I don't know what to do next. And I feel sad that you spent 62 lovely years and you don't know what to do next. Luckily for Ambi and myself, I can say, we both built another career outside the corporate sector, teaching, writing, interacting with young people. He does it in his way, I do it in my way. There's a lovely film done by Frank Capra. It's a Wonderful Life. Some of you might have seen it. And if you haven't, please see it. It's on YouTube. There's this guy who thinks that he's failed in life. And he's about to commit suicide. He's on the top floor of the Empire State Building. And a little angel comes to him and says, hey, why are you doing this? He says, nobody loves me. Nobody. I've narrated this story in the book. And he says, come with me. He makes him invisible and takes him to where his family is, to where his friends are, his colleagues are, his village people are. And they're talking about him, saying, what a nice guy he is. And the angel says, it's a wonderful life. Your family loves you. Your colleagues think highly of you. They may have a few words of criticism. And they bring him back, make him visible again, and he gives up the idea of committing suicide. It's a nice, touching little movie. So I'm going to stop there. I've given you a sample of what the construction of the book is, what the lessons are, and they're not lessons in how the books were balanced or complicated commercial stuff. They are simple lessons of life, which my brother and I have undertaken to write. We can talk about it between us,
We will,
but
yeah.
over to you.
Yeah, okay, we will. Thanks. Thanks. It's always a tough, follow-up act to Gopal, because he's full of so many stories and anecdotes that I'm going to be struggling and searching for words. But fortunately, I can talk about my book, and
And there are lots of stories in your book as well.
yeah, yeah. So I can do that. I can talk about how the book. So the book is, I'm holding the book. It's called All the World's a Stage: A Personal Branding Story. You may ask, I've spent all my life in advertising and branding of products and services and companies, and what do I know about personal branding? Honestly, not too much. Okay, so that's the honest admission. What happened during the pandemic, the early days of the pandemic, I got a call from my alma mater, IIT Madras Alumni Association. They said, look, this pandemic has come, can we do something together? Can we do a webinar on branding? You give talks. So I said, okay, I'll do. And me and my big mouth, I said, look, why only asking me? You should get many people, every week you should have it. Those are the days when webinars were a big thing. Actually people attended webinars. Now you have to, literally put danda to get people to come to webinars. But those days people used to come to, attend webinars and ask questions and all that. So I said, why don't you ask other people? They said, no, why don't you do 3? So I said, me and my big mouth, I got stuck with doing 3 webinars over a period of, I think, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I did one on branding, and I did one on living the brand, which is about corporate branding. And the third one, I said, let me do on personal branding. So I read up some stuff, and I put together a short presentation, and I kind of, ad-libbed my way through it. Funnily, what happened 10 days later was a company called, said, look, this personal branding talk you gave, we would like you to do that to our agents, right? So I said, your finance, yeah, they're a mutual fund company, they wanted the agents to go through. I said, why? He said, no, because we keep telling them about mutual fund, they should know about personal branding. I said, you attended my talk? She said, yeah, I attended your talk. Some colleague of mine said that this guy is giving 3 talks, you missed the first one, I attended the second and third. I attended second and third, and she said, we thought our people will be finding you. So I did that. And then I did one more, and within 2 months I had done 4 or 5 of those talks. And I said, look, is there something here that people are finding this whole personal branding to be some kind of a holy grail? There are a lot of myths about personal branding. So I started diving into it. I read about 5-6 books, and I'm not as voracious a reader as Gopal here, but I read 30-40 articles, and I got a broad idea of putting a book on personal branding. I spoke to my literary agent and Anish Shandy. We bounced some ideas off, and I said, look, Anish, I want to write it differently. I've written many books on case studies and on other things. I want to write it differently. So he said, what do you mean differently? I said, I want to write it like friends talking and disagreeing, So he said, yeah, let's try it. So the story is about a set of friends who meet in their reunion in IIM Calcutta for their silver reunion, 25th year reunion. And one of them is a very successful entrepreneur who's taken his company public and done well. One other person is me, a much younger avatar, as I've explained in the book. The Ambi in the book is 45 years old, not 65. And a couple, husband, wife, alumni, and then, so I created a set of 5 characters, and they walk around the campus discussing branding and personal branding. And they get into some serious disagreements on what is branding, what is personal branding, can you actually do personal branding, why should you do personal branding? So the book, through this conversational, I've never tried this conversational approach before, so I didn't know how it will work, but I've sent the book to Gopal for his views, and I got some very kind comments from friends, but it's a very different, it's very different as a typical Bollywood thing, like ये film तो बहुत अलग तरीके का है, अलग type का है, but in this reality, this book is different. It's just a conversation among 5 friends who discuss this whole thing. But what is personal branding? Do you really need to do personal branding? Isn't it all bullshit? Isn't personal branding all hot air? What are the various steps you need to go through in order to build your personal brand? Do you really need a personal brand? Why don't you just work? You work hard and your personal brand gets built. Why do you need to spend time? The other myth is about, if you want to build a personal brand, you need to be very active in social media. There's a big myth that, if you're not active on social media, you can't build your personal brand. Again, that's a myth, which in the book I've explained. The other myth is that, personal branding has all become big after social media. Not at all. I mean, the first article on personal branding was written by Tom Peters 25 years ago. So from the last 25 years, a lot of work has been done in personal branding. And the icing of the cake is that I did some work on understanding brand Gandhi. And I found that actually he has used many of the techniques and tools which we today talk about when you talk of personal branding. He used all these tools and techniques 70, 80 years ago, or more than that, 100 years ago, right? And he was a master personal branding champion, though none of us would call him a personal brand, but he built a personal brand. So the book is a conversational approach. It's meant for young people, the age of 25 to 45, who all say that, look, I want to get onto Facebook. I want to get onto LinkedIn. I want to post stuff. I want to project myself. My caution is, no, that's the wrong place to start. Start from where you are. And in a sense, our book kind of meets there, saying that, look, what are you? What are you good at? What do you like to do? Figure that out first. Then you start, what we call develop a presence. How are you going to present yourself? Develop a voice. How are you going to communicate yourself? And then amplify your brand through social media or through communication, giving talks like this, etc., etc., etc. That's how you build your personal brand. Personal brand doesn't mean you open a LinkedIn account and start posting random stuff on personal brand. Personal branding is not that, now I'm going to grow a beard, now I'm going to shave my head, I'm going to color my hair blue, purple. No, that's not building a personal brand. Personal brand has to start with where you are. What are you good at? What do you like to do? Define that. And there, I think our book meets. But then you can quietly do your job. But today you have the opportunity to project yourself. So the issue, and some people have asked me, look, isn't personal branding just boasting? It's just going and telling people, I did this, I did that. It's not. But there is a line between boasting and informing people about what you've done. That's what you do when you do successful personal branding. The other area where I've dealt with in the book is about networking. There is a lot of thing about, networking is all bad. People go around giving visiting cards and parties, That's not networking. The real high quality networking is where you actually get into new groups, where you make new friends and you build deep relationships. And I've talked about this particular incident in the book. All of you know Bill Gates. His company is actually doing quite well in spite of the meltdown of Netflix and Twitter and things. So Bill Gates' big break was when he got an offer to sell software to IBM. It's called the old IBM PC. Some of you may remember those old machines. IBM PC ran on what is called disk operating system created by Microsoft. Now, how did Bill Gates get to sell it to IBM? Interesting story, which I discovered in a Harvard Business Review article, and later I confirmed it with multiple other sources. Bill Gates was in Harvard, and he had dropped out. And he was sitting in his garage working on computers and software and all that. His mom, Mary Gates, was a very successful businesswoman, and she was a member of a NGO called United Way. And she was very deeply involved, and she used to attend meetings regularly. And in one of those meetings, the person sitting next to her, a person called Jim Akers, senior manager in IBM. So he asked, Mary, what's your son doing? So she said, well, Jim, he's doing something in the garage and he calls it software. I don't know what it is. So Jim Akers apparently said, software, he's doing something with computer software, interesting. Why don't you tell him to come and meet our people? We are going to launch a small computer and we are looking for people who can develop some, software for us. And that's how he got the introduction. And then he went on to actually create a company and sell. That's the power of networking, right? Networking is not just going to parties and giving visiting cards or going around randomly shaking hands. Networking is to create a parallel passion, which could be an NGO, it could be a music circle, it could be a literary circle, but building deep relationships, meeting people, and then you expand your network. Your network, and I've talked about in the book how your network needs to be wide and deep. Just by knowing people is not enough, you need to know them deeply. So the book covers things like where did branding start? What is the origin of personal branding? Do you really need personal branding? What is executive presence? How do you present yourself? What is executive voice? How is it important? What is the power of networking? And of course, it answers, the person there, my friend is asking the question like, why I have got a successful company, why do I need personal branding? And I've explained there that, even CEOs need personal branding because, even within companies, you need personal branding because people who are seen as better brands attract better talent. etc., etc. So that's the gist of the book, and I think I've done my 15 minutes of pitching for the book. It's an easy read. You can read it over one flight from here to say Delhi, and make some notes. And idea is that after reading the book, a young person can take something out and apply it in his life and his work the next day. So that's the purpose of the book. It's a simple, easy to read book. And so thanks, Gopal. Back to you.
Okay,
so let's get into our powwow here. We need to.
Obviously, I will comment or ask questions on
Yep.
you and the other way around. No point my commenting on my book.
Yes,
and
correct. So you need to know. So do you want me to start?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So, in your book, you spoke about 3 broad domains, right? First is discovering yourself. The second is connecting
With others.
with others. And the third is
Context.
context, right? So, in a sense, your book and my book meet in that discovering yourself bit. But your discovering yourself seems to be, to me at least, it's very deep. It looks like something which the philosophers have been kind of struggling with, etc., etc. So, is it easy to discover yourself, or is
Is it easy?
yeah? Is it
It's one of the most difficult things in life. If I pitch it at a philosophical plane, what Adi Shankara said or Ramanuja said, you'll say, yeah. But don't get me on a Saturday morning into Shankara and Ramanuja. But I have a simple formula because we are living in a world of algorithms.
Yep.
Your performance, this applies to each one of us individually. Your performance is equal to your potential minus your inner ghosts. We all have inner ghosts, and our inner ghosts are different. And those are the ones that retard us. You can apply this to an individual. You can apply this formula to a company. You can apply this formula to a nation. You can apply this formula to a civilization. And when that entity, the individual, the society, the company, the nation, has inner ghosts which exceed its potential or come very close to it, then the performance declines. You see the decline of the Roman Empire, the decline of the Ottoman Empire, the decline of the Mughal Empire, the decline of the Ming dynasty, all of which I have done a little study of. The inner ghosts take over. And what does inner ghost mean? That's a psychological word in psychology. It's about understanding yourself. So, one of the books I've written is titled Crash. It's about CEOs and why they get fired. And again, I believe in all these books. If you wrap it up in magical mantras, then you'll get one type of esoteric output. If you wrap it up in good common sense, people might remember it. The inner ghosts of leaders who become CEOs is that their brain gets damaged. That's the thesis.
Or is it hubris?
Well, what is hubris to the individual? Your brain gets damaged. There are some people who will be inaugurating some new bridge or factory every day. They are changing their dress 5 times a day.
We will not talk about those people.
I'm not talking about those people. Whoever they are, it's up to you to decide. But there are people who are so obsessed with their self-image. I'm talking of CEOs whom you have met and I have met. Actually, why talk of CEOs? You and I have also done it. In fleeting occasions in our career. Then somebody pulled you down and got you back to terra firma. So I think understanding yourself is really complex. Now, if you pitch it at a philosophical level, then you'll get one outcome. Obviously, neither my brother and I were qualified to do so, nor we wish to do so in our book. So we've revolved it around parables. And I've narrated some to you. And I do believe that understanding why would Shankara have said it in 700 AD? Understand yourself, self-awareness.
So how do you understand yourself?
That's the whole point.
Suppose a young executive comes to you and says, "Sir, I read your book, Pivot Career. My career seems to be going okay, but you talked about understanding yourself. Give me tips on how do I understand myself?"
You have to square up. I'll say put down your pluses and minuses. What bothers you at night? What keeps you awake? What makes you tense? there's a menu of questions which, from common sense, I'm not even prescriptive in that respect, which will start telling you the problem with our social lives, certainly in Bombay city and anywhere in the world, is that we have great difficulties in squaring up with reality. Because we're living in our own bubble world. And understanding yourself requires you to separate the atmosphere of the bubble
So
world.
it does understanding yourself. By understanding yourself, do you mean find out what you enjoy doing, or what are you
Find
good
out
at
who
doing?
you are, why you are doing what
See,
you're
who
doing.
you are, thoda, to me, is still in the Shankara Vivekananda area, na? So
It may be, but you take a guy like you. I'm putting myself into your shoes because I think I have been quite independently and separately through a similar. You retired from a top corporate job. I also retired from a top corporate job, independently and separately. I went through a process which I suspect you also went through, which is, what do I want to do now that I'm 65 or whatever age it was? And you said, I said, I will keep saying I because I'm implying that you also must have had a similar sort of, you know what I really enjoy? Somewhere down the line I started teaching. I enjoyed it. Somewhere down the line I started writing. I enjoy that. Can I do that? Because by God's grace I don't need money.
yeah, but that's
And
that's
I
for
said,
us.
I therefore, let me finish, went through a process which in my case ended up saying, I have got wealth of experience. I've got wealth of money. That wealth of money I'll give to my children, do some charity. It's not going to be so big it'll change the world. But my wealth of experience is going to end up in Chandanwadi. And I went to Chandanwadi and saw how many people's experience just gets burnt up there. So I wanted to empty myself out. By sharing that wealth of experience, I felt you're not diminishing that wealth, whereas in the case of money, you are. So that put me onto a trajectory of things, which caused me to complete 17 books. I decided to have co-authors because I said, if I can inspire other people to become authors. So first 9 books, 8 books I wrote on my own. Then I said, it's much tougher working with a co-author, I can tell you that.
Yeah, and Gopal has written books with his brothers, 2 of his brothers, Naru and Shini. Naru was one of my early bosses, and he's also worked with 5 professors
Academics.
from SPJMR, which I think is very tough.
It's very tough to deal with on a book project, So
I'm struggling to get some articles out.
now, Ambi, to answer your question, without going to Shankara and Ramanuja, I'm giving a practical way in which I discovered. I suspect, and you're welcome to comment on it yourself, you have been through a similar, if not obviously not identical process, because you're doing outwardly about the same things, but you're doing it for a different inner calling, in your case and my case. And I believe that this is a very robust and good personal process. Where I have a problem with some of the, not a problem, I should say, where I have a difficulty is, if I'm a 22-year-old guy who reads this book that you have written, there are no limits set for him. I may become obsessed with my personal branding to the point where that becomes the main show and not,
Well,
discovering
I
myself.
think this,
How would you advise a young person, say, hey, personal branding is okay up to a point, but first you must change the product before you start thinking of branding?
which is what I'm saying in the book also, right? And I've created a little interplay between these 2 friends, saying, personal branding, is it even needed? This guy is doing a good job, but is it even needed? Why should you even do personal branding? I think where our 2 books kind of meet is that you need to define what you are. What are you good at? What do you like to do? You like to do interesting, creative stuff, or you like to do analytical stuff. You like to write. You like to do what do you want to do. Get that clear. Don't start building a personal brand by doing all kinds of stuff.
It's not like a product branding.
It's not a product.
Yeah.
It's not a product. You need to figure out. Then you may say, look, I will just do my job, right? Now, the difference is if you do your job And today in a corporate environment, a lot of people are doing their job. So how does one person stand out from another person? So I've given this example of a real story of a student who told me she and another student had been taken by this very good multinational company and to do a summer assignment. One person was based in Bombay, this girl was sent to Delhi, and she did a very good job in Delhi, but finally the placement, this guy who was in Bombay got the job, right? And she didn't get it. She had no regrets, but I was asking, look, what did you not do? She said, sir, I did a very good project. The project was very good. Everyone rated it well. But they want you to take only one person, which is why I lost. I said, what could you have done? If given a chance, what do you think you missed out? Said, sir, my entire project was in Delhi. So I took the briefing, went to Delhi for 8 weeks and came back and presented. So what do you think you should have done? So if I had made 2 extra trips to Bombay, met the people, it comes to second part of your thing, which is also part of brand building. If I'd come and met them twice.
And teased it out.
Yeah, and presented my case, you may call it brand building, you may call it communication, but I might have actually got the job and not my friend, right? But I missed out on that. I didn't understand the importance of communication, importance of projecting myself. I didn't project. Now, it's not bragging. Definitely, it's not bragging, it's projecting. So she didn't project herself, she didn't get the job. So I think if you are a lousy executive, if you're a lousy businessman, personal branding is not going to help you at all, right? But if you're a good executive, then personal branding can give you that little bit of an extra edge, including stuff like, how you dress. In corporate thing, some people keep, wearing all kinds of dresses. Some people, when you see this guy, see this girl, she's always properly dressed. I mean, very well, turned out. That's also personal branding. How you stand up and present in front of an audience, that's personal branding. Some people murmur and mutter and you can't hear them. And so, which is why companies like yours and in my old company, we used to have, we had the theater person, right, Mehta, who used to train us for presentations. Including record it. I mean, today's everything is so easy. I'm talking of those days you had to actually get a video recorder, record that video, play it on TV, and then say, look, you're repeating the same sentence too many times, you're saying the same thing again and again, or you're hemming and hawing. Today you can do all that with your mobile phone, right? But people don't do it. So you stand up and you're starting to make a presentation, don't know your slides. You're turning back and looking, you don't have a cue card. So stuff like that. All that is part of projecting yourself. It's not empty boasting of what a great person you are, but projecting yourself. So in my case, I'm saying, however good job you do, you can be quiet. I say, I will not do anything personal branding stuff. But if you do that personal branding, which could be communicating, which could be the way you present yourself, maybe doing something in social media, it can give you that little bit of an extra edge. It's not going to save your job. If you've done a lousy job, you'll get fired, right? You're not going to. But if you do a good job, and if you also project yourself as a good personal brand, chances of you being promoted, chance of you getting a plum assignment abroad, all that would help. Overall, I think, when you look at the global setting.
So would you accept the following? I'm very fond of algorithms since it appeals to young people. You have built your personal brand better than your personal competence. You're a candidate for firing. If you built your personal brand approximately in line with your personal competence, you're in a good space. If you built your personal brand less than your personal competence, you may lose the odd one in the future.
Yeah.
So you will not get fired.
Yeah, you will not. So I think your 3 things are right. Let me also add 2 more layers.
Yeah.
If you build your personal brand at the cost of your corporate company, corporate brand, you can get fired. If you build your personal brand at the same level, whenever you talk about yourself, you also talk about your corporate brand, chances are you're okay. But if you build your personal brand a rung below that of your corporate brand, chances are you'll get recognized. I mean, all of us have been in corporate jobs, and whenever, I mean, before we left the corporate job, our job was always to project the company we work for. I mean, I spent, 27 years with FCB Ulka. You spend, 20 years with Levers and then 20 years with the Tatas, right? So our job when we got up on stage is not to say, I'm a great guy, or to go up and say, what a great company we are, FCB Ulka. What a great bunch of clients we have, Tatas, Wipro, Z, ICICI. We had great bunch of clients. So sometimes, I used to, even some people used to pull my leg, yaar, तुम्हारा सब client अच्छे हैं, बुरा client नहीं है, ऐसे नहीं है मेरे पास. All my clients are good. So if you do that, and I've discussed that in the book, think, look, how do you manage this? When you projecting a personal brand, what happens with the corporate brand? And the advice is always your company you work for is at a higher level than you, as long as you're in the company. Now I'm out, I can project myself. Otherwise, I'm always wondering, and especially in advertising, you talk very well about your company, which is your agency, what great work you do. And you also talk about your clients. Amul, fantastic, company. Tata's, fantastic company. Wipro, fantastic company. Z, you always say good things about your clients, right?
So I'm just to provoke discussion, and then maybe we should open up in case anybody else wants to comment, because it's 11:30 is the time, isn't it?
Okay, so you give your last shot, and then I'll die, and then you can answer all the questions.
No, I just wanted to say that if anybody tries to project himself ahead of, are there any examples? I know it's not very nice to quote examples, so you could quote old examples so that the person is not alive, but just to sort of trigger, Vishal Sikka in Infosys, or we are equidistant from it, you and I were not.
No, you've written about some of those.
Or Yes Bank.
Some of those people, Yes Bank, I think, unfortunately.
Those are examples of what you could consider. We are not damning them because that's not our job here.
People who project themselves beyond their company. Or, Ramalinga Raju. Ramalinga Raju was a great guy. He created a, great company there, right? But he got ahead of himself, right? So some people get ahead of himself. But to be fair, if you keep your understanding your brand, you understand, a company, the company is more important than you, you're always in a good place, right? I mean, people like, again, talking positively, people like, Aditya Puri, who built a fantastic HDFC brand, he was not active on social media. He was not active anywhere. In fact, for many years, he never even carried a mobile phone. But on the other side, Anand Mahindra is doing a fantastic job. He is very active on social media. That doesn't mean he's a bad leader. He's a great leader. Or look at, Harsh Goenka. I don't know what's going to happen when Twitter shuts down, but Harsh Goenka has got a great sense of humor on Twitter. The kind of jokes he writes about, fantastic. Right? Two corporate leaders, very different personal brands, in my opinion. Yeah, I think we should now. Yeah.
We have mics going around, so do raise your hand if you have a question.
So I mentioned my name.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Alan Sequeira, worked with the Tatas and Mahindras for a long time. And I have one question for both of you gentlemen. I'm from human resources, retired in human resources. One is, I think both the books are brilliant. I've read both of them. And both the books are brilliant. And there are nuggets of wisdom in both. But I'd like to say that there is some intermingling between a leadership point of view and a teachable point of view. First of all, I remember having a conversation with C.K. Prahlad when we at our Leadership Development Center in Nasik. And I raised the two issues because he used to come to teach. As where that distinction, it actually intertwines with each other. Because on one hand, your leadership point of view must have some uniqueness and distinctiveness, etc. You have been unique in your thought process, in the way you have laid out things, etc. Number two is the curiosity to learn and to constantly refine your thinking and your thought process. The third is, of course, in Gopal's book, humility and the numerous stories he has quoted. And the fourth, of course, is empathy and connect with people. Because we don't have it, and many of us really falter here. Yeah, we don't have it. We learn through trial and error. I think, as Gopal has written in one of his books, we learn through trial and error because we get few dakkas both from the family as well as in the corporate world and in our relationships with our peers. So the uniqueness and distinctiveness you bring to bear, which was confirmed by Dave Ulrich also from Michigan, the other of HR. And R.R. Nair, who's my good friend also, said the same thing. I'd written a big blog the other day, and he has been associated with me for a long time in Mahindra. So the fact of the matter is, don't you think that these two are intertwined in some measure? Now, your uniqueness in your personal brand, as you rightly put it, your personal brand is only not about dress only or presence. It's much more than that, that you bring something unique to the table which is appreciated by one and all around you. You can speak eloquently, you can express your thoughts, you bring something unique and innovative to the table, which not many people may have around you. So these also constitute that, don't you think so? It's not either or in any measure. That's my question.
What are the either or? What are the two? I lost you, sir.
Just saying that, some hairy-fairy, HR stuff, but it is much more than that. It goes into uniqueness of the value proposition that you bring to the table. In terms of your own competence, as Gopal rightly said, the competence and the potential that you bring to the table. Do you have a unique value proposition there which is respected by people?
Can I attempt to
try,
respond? Yeah. Alan and I have worked together, so I think I have learned to understand him more than you have.
I confuse you.
Who developed your fingerprint or your iris? It's unique. Yeah. Who developed it? Your mother, your father, your grandfather, grandmother? Biology. Once you have it, if you happen to be a Sarika or a Hrithik Roshan with light eyes, he's saying you can do something with it. But there's always something unique, whether it's light eyes, dark hair, dense hair. So if I take that metaphor, who you are is the first determinant. To that extent, these are bricks that are sitting one on top of the other. If you lack empathy consistently, we all lack empathy occasionally. You just have to ask your wife and she'll confirm it to you. You don't need to go too far, okay? Or your husband to be avoid being gender specific.
Yeah, you will get.
Who you are is the basic building brick, and as Ambi said, on that there'll be some distinctive feature. And I just took a light-hearted example of Sarika's eyes or Hrithik Roshan's eyes to illustrate the point, and people will remember you for that. So we don't disagree with you.
Yeah, thank you. I think thank him for answering that tough question. Thank you, Gopal.
This is addressed to Gopal mainly. You gave that example of a bad thing going on in your department, and you decided to go to the chairman and say that I should have known, I didn't. Now, was there really any other option? That is one. And second, did it have any bad effect on the fact that you could not really detect something going on in your department?
No, there were options, and I was in a dilemma. Remember, I was preening myself. I had become a director at 41. So you have to understand the mindset at that time. And in reflecting on the incident, I had three options. One was to go and come clean. Second was to filibuster. And third was to just hope and pray every morning. I do my arti, and hope that the problem will just go away. Since I could not think through clearly, my mind was clouded, I went to a mentor of mine. I said, this has happened, I don't know what to do. And he's the one who guided me. He said, Gopal, you can have a dilemma when you're 21, 31, 41, 51, 61. Walk straight to the chairman, barge in. Don't even try to fix an appointment through the secretary and say, you got a problem. The moment you show your vulnerability and say, I need help, you will get help in plenty. Most people fail to do it. And that's exactly what I did. So that's the answer to the first question. and how I got a steer on it. The answer to the second question is, luckily for me, probably it's a tribute to Hindustan Lever's leadership. They actually promoted me. Not because I made a mistake, but they said we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
The challenge of the person who made the mistake is to admit it and get on with life. And probably, nobody told me this, I never asked, but I got promoted to be the chairman of a Unilever company after that. So I hope I've answered both your questions.
Thank you.
There could be another company where the moment you're done, you got CBI and all these guys after you.
Yeah.
But nowadays you can get CBI after you even without doing anything wrong. So it's okay.
Yeah. CBI and IB you can come for any reason.
ED.
ED.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
All right, my name is Tanaya, and I'm a practicing life coach. I'm building on to Gopal sir's, and then the question is for you, Ambi sir, to figure out who you are first, where your books meet together. So my question is for you in terms of personal branding, because I work on my own for the past 10 years, and I am also associated with management institutes and stuff like that. Where I'm coming from is I'm eager to listen to your thoughts. What would be it like for a person who is an extreme introvert, who I am? And in the initial years when I went on my own, I knew people need to know me for me to get a sustainable amount of work to survive in a city like Mumbai. After a couple of years when I ventured into life coaching and reading and psychology and all of that, I realized, okay, this is not my cup of tea. I have to accept who I am, and but in more than 14, 15 years what I have worked, I've realized my work is my brand, in the sense I come across as an SME. So once I work with a particular client or a university or an organization, that's how my brand gets created. But I'm also conscious of the fact that that process is much more slower than what it would be as compared to having either people doing your personal branding in terms of social media or something else or otherwise. But I spend a lot of my time in strengthening my own skills as a subject matter expert. So what would be your
I
tips
think you got
on
to,
that?
one is, it's probably a misnomer to say that only extroverts can become personal brands, strong personal brands. I think introverts can become, right? In your own case, you're an introvert, but you manage to build your brand. Finally, you have to be conscious about what makes you happy, right? If it, social media can take away a lot of your time, and there's whole new area coming called digital detoxification, right? So, but again, people who are doing smart social media say, I keep 10 minutes for social media every day. That's it. I'm out of it, right? So you can compartmentalize your time and say, I'll not spend more than this amount of time on doing things. So you have to find your path and do things which you enjoy doing. If you don't enjoy doing something, don't do it, right? Why should you go and do things which you don't like to do? Don't do it, So do things you enjoy doing, and do things which you're comfortable doing and happy doing it. Like you said, you teach in business schools. If when I do executive coaching and people say, I don't, I said, look, the softest target for you is to go to a business school and deliver a guest lecture. You can mumble, you can forget lines, you can forget slide, doesn't matter, because you're a big chap in a company, you've got a big title. The students will wear their jacket and all and come and sit and clap. You will feel very good, but have someone in the audience to give you honest feedback. So you take that feedback and keep improving. That's a soft target. So even a hardened introvert can develop a public persona by taking small and gentle steps, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the gentleman behind you. We'll take
Yeah.
one last question.
Yeah, okay.
And
First of all, Gopal and Ambi, pleasure to hear you as usual. Ambi, you started with a very deep question about how do you know yourself and what do you, kind of mean by knowing yourself. And so I was just giving a thought to that, and here's my perspective for both of you to comment on. So I would say that if you go to the Shankara and Ramanuja level, then knowing yourself means answering three questions. Who are you? What's the purpose that you are living here for? And how do you get it? We are not into that domain. We are into magical mantras for plotting your own success story. So just as Gopal, you are very fond of algorithms, I'm very fond of structure. So I was just trying to give a structure to how one would get to know oneself. And the structure that I'm proposing, and I would like you to comment, is get to know what your swadharma is and what your paradharma is. It's a 4-pillar structure. Swadharma would mean something which you really enjoy doing. That's something which gives you great satisfaction and you do it effortlessly and you want to carry it forward. Paradharma is you are what you are and there are some things, for whatever it is, with no justification, you just cannot be in that space. Yeah, so that's your paradharma. And then the third pillar would be to go into your value systems and your beliefs, because whatever you want to do, etc., will be highly, highly driven by that ultimately. And the fourth one would be just to see what are your distinctive features. So if you really put your thoughts into these 4 buckets, then you will get a reasonably good answer to yourself about who you are. Now, I haven't read your book, so I don't know how it fits into your narrative of knowing yourself, knowing the other, knowing the context. But quite independently, I thought this would be, my way of trying to know myself at an operating level.
No, I think you kind of articulated what I think Gopal spoke about in his book, that like what he said, everyone is unique, right? Your fingerprint is unique, your iris is unique, you're unique. The whole struggle we have is we try to be someone else, which we can't. So all of us make those mistakes. You look at your boss and he's got a beard, you grow a beard, and he has a hair, you'll grow your hair, you do all that. But by the time you're 30, 35, you figure out, no, this is where I am, this is what I can be, right? And then you build on that, and then you build on that, and you build step by step by step, right? I think I've written about my book. It's a very mundane point, and we'll end with this point because it's a funny point. So my first job was in advertising, an agency called Rediffusion. My boss was Naru, his brother, and Vish. And Vish had come from Lintas, so he had a beard, and he always used to wear a kurta, churidar kurta. So I also grew a beard. Right? And I said, yeah. Because, the logic was in advertising, I tend to look too young and I need to look old. So I need to look old, so I grew a beard. And it worked well for me for the 3 years I was there. And then I joined a very proper British multinational called Boots. I went through the interview, I joined the company, and I think a couple of days after I joined the company, the MD, Bedappa, Medappa, Ponappa, proper gentleman, said in the loo, mentioned, Mr. Parameswaran, beard is okay for advertising. We are a British multinational company. Next morning, I shaved my beard. So how you can classify it as Swadharma, Padharma, whatever. But my survival instincts kicked in and I quickly shaved my beard and I've not grown my beard after that. But we keep making mistakes, we keep learning, and keep growing. And only thing is, what I was telling her, enjoy what you're doing. If you don't like to go give talks, don't give talks. You don't like to write, don't write. The other thing is, of course, develop a liking for that. Develop a liking for, if you think public speaking is important for you in your job, and you don't like public speaking, you got a problem. So you need to find out how to get to like public speaking. So take those little gentle steps and build yourself, right? So thank you, sir.
Thank you.